This is a film about getting up really early, going and watching the sunrise, and then later that day going to watch the sunset. But not any old sunrise, nor any old sunset, but the earliest sunrise that was available to me the day I did this, and the latest sunset the day I did this. And to work out when and where the earliest sunrise and the latest sunset are, I used a little bit of maths and a little bit of geographic information systems. And I'm going to show you how to do that on the computer. The time that the sun breaks the horizon is a relatively simple thing to calculate. It's primarily a function of the longitude and latitude of the observer, their height above sea level, and the day of the year. Now, there's an excellent page in Wikipedia that goes into explaining exactly how to go about doing this, and that even comes with some Python code in order to implement it. I've produced this implementation in the programming language R, and I'll put a link in the description to my GitHub page where you can download this script and run it. It should work for any location on Earth. There's a function to calculate the sunrise time and the sunset time. So if we load these functions in, for example, I could show you, if we call a variable x, they say the sunrise time, for each day in the year, say there's 365 days in most years, the sunrise time for that day will, let's call it minus 5 degrees of longitude, 55 degrees of latitude at sea level for that day. And then we can plot that. That didn't work. So at the start of the year, sunrise is near 9 o'clock in the morning, and then near the summer solstice, it's at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then it's at 9 o'clock in the morning again. So to search to where to find the earliest or latest sunsets for a given day, we need to get a bit geographical in our analysis, and there's another function here that does that. The 3 bits of information we need, the latitude, the longitude, and the height above sea level, that's essentially a digital terrain model, and there's free digital terrain models for the entire surface of the Earth. And these models are basically rasters, which is a grid of numbers, and it's the numbers that we need to do this calculation. So if we feed into the computer these numbers and calculate the sunrise time for every point on a map that we also feed into the computer, all we need to do is to find the minimum or maximum pixel on that map, and that will be the location that we need to go in order to observe the sunrise or the sunset. This is what mathematicians call the optimization problem. And we can visualize the results like a map. So here's a map of the sunrise time on the 1st of January, and I've programmed the function to highlight the point, the pixel in the map with the earliest, the lowest pixel value. And you can see from the map the kind of direction in which the sun is shining, illuminating the landmass here, the island of Ireland, from the southeast. Now, if we perform the calculation for every day of the year, we can see how that changes. So near the equinoxes, the sun is coming duly from the east, and then it changes to the north. So as we go through the year, different points, I'm going back in time now. So say in March, the earliest sunsets observed here at the top of Slieve Donard, not because it's the most easterly point, although it is close to the easterly point, because it is the highest point in the, it's a balance between how east it is and how high it is. So the day I chose for this challenge, the 21st of May, the sunrise, the highest point is in the northeast of County Antrim. And the sunset is a similar story. The sunset times, you can see in the winter time, the sun's setting in the southwest Near the equinoxes, it's setting in the west. And near the summer solstice, it's setting to the northwest. But it just so happens, because of the shape of Ireland, the latest sunset is invariably always right here in Achill Island, on top of a mountain that I know very well, called Croaghan. Now, near the solstice, there's very, very similar sunset times on top of Slieve League and on top of Errigal and right up at Malin Head, but the latest time remains at the top of Croaghan on Achill Island, which I suppose isn't technically in the Irish mainland, but it's close enough. So on the day I chose for this challenge, the 21st of May, it's not even close. Croaghan is significantly the latest sunset. So to explore the map interactively, we can export it into the GIS, where we can zoom in and out and examine the pixel values directly. So this is the raster for the particular day of the year, the 21st of May, where I've chosen to do the challenge. And if we get this raster and visualize each pixel according to a color, we can threshold the colors a bit. So if we set our maximum sunrise time at 4:30 in the morning, we can see where the terminator is along the Earth's surface. So this is where the sun is just hitting the land and no more, and you can see the higher ground being picked out by the sun as it clears the horizon over to the northeast, as it's already risen over Scotland and the Hebrides at the other side of the sea, and we begin to see our earliest point here. So to search further, we can threshold it even more. I'm going to set that to about just after 4:15, and then just a few minutes later. So here we can see just a few pixels illuminated by the sun at this time. So I know for a fact that the earliest sunrise in Ireland is at the top of this hill, overlooking Tourhead and Fairhead and the North Channel. Carnamore is the name of this hill, and it's not particularly accessible. So this is just after 4 Greenwich Mean Time, which is just after 5 Irish Summertime, which is the daylight saving time equivalent that we use here. And although it's possible to walk up here, it'll be really quite a hike at that time in the morning. Whereas a few, so her pixel value there is 4.26, whereas at the top of this mountain here, it's 4.27. So it's really only a few seconds later the sun will hit the top of this mountain. And this is called Knocklayd, and it's much, much more accessible. And it's, I think, the best place to observe the sunrise. And as for the sunset, Croaghan is a place I know and love very well, and if we perform the same thresholding exercise in that map, zoom out. So this is the terminator for the sunrise, this is the terminator for the sunset, and we can see a few points in Achill Island illuminated. So let's go. It's time for the road trip. There was patches of mist as I drove north, and although it was a beautiful clear night and a lovely clear morning, you can see in the left of the screen the mist that forms on the top of the mountain. It was doing it because moist air coming off the Atlantic was driven upwards by the land and cooled and condensed. But we press on nonetheless. 4:15. Less than an hour till sunrise. And I think we've got plenty of time. But we've encountered the problem of mist. And I don't know whether it's going to lift. This is always the way. Another option, of course, is just to press on to the summit and hope that we'll actually come out over this fog. Which is possible, you never know. Look at the moon. I have to try to get a photograph of that bad boy too.
Knocklayd is a surprisingly steep climb, and by the time I got near the top, I really was quite out of breath.
Oh dear. Don't know what we're going to do. This is the passage tomb and the triangulation point at the top of this mountain. Bog cotton, it's lovely. But as you can see, no sunrise. The clouds did break there just a while, briefly. I can see out over a carpet of similar cloud. We only have a few minutes, really. I'm going to hang around here for a couple of minutes. Sun. I saw the sun. Did you see it? This is looking good now. Look. And the sun rises. And it goes away again. I think what we'll do is take a jog down the hill. I mean, basically we have to run so far to find a clear spot.
Then, whilst taking rather shaky footage with my long lens, this spectacular sight appeared.
Oh my god. Wow! Wow. Well, this has now turned into a rather pleasant walk. When the fog was thicker, you could look at the surface of the sun safely with the naked eye, obviously, and you could see that sunspot with the naked eye, which is very rare, but of course the sun's very active at the minute. It's a fabulous cloudscape, little skylark there. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a good day, folks. So, yes, I'm very glad I came. What a wonderful place. Knocklayd, County Antrim.
So I packed up my camera, returned to the car, looked at the map, and started driving west to Achill Island to see the sunset.
So to get a bit of a rest, I've come to this very peaceful forest on the shores of Lough Erne. It looks like, except for a couple of Dutch tourists, I've kind of got the place to myself. This forest is publicly owned, but it was once part of a 17th century plantation estate called Castle Caldwell, and this is the castle itself, just peeking out from behind the ivy and the sycamore trees. And Castle Caldwell has it all. So what I'm looking for is a clearing with a couple of trees where I can swing my hammock. When literally surrounded by idyllic places to put up your hammock, it actually becomes very difficult to decide where to do it. But here is as good as any. It's good night from me. Oh, this is bliss. Well, that was jolly refreshing. I had a wee nap. Now it's time to go. If there's one thing in life I like doing, it's driving to the west coast of Ireland. West is best, you know? And there's something about just heading off into that land of the sunset that just makes you feel free. I wonder, is that like that everywhere? I don't know. I cannot wait to get to my destination. It's been such a successful day thus far. Now look at this. Is this a sight for sore eyes or what? There is the mighty Croaghan. That's a sure sign you are in the west of Ireland if ever there was one. Every time I go to the west of Ireland, I wish I could stay here. Or at least stay here for a bit longer.
And so I drove over the little bridge that links Achill to the mainland by road, and soon caught sight of Croaghan, which, like Knocklayd this morning, was crowned with Atlantic mist. Hopefully that would make for an exciting sunset. There's a little beach, I know, at the western end of Achill called Keem. This is an achingly beautiful spot where I was hoping a quick paddle in the cool sea would prime my legs for the ascent of Croaghan later. I then parked at a place called Loch Corrimore and looked for somewhere discreet where I could pitch my one-man tent for the night and cook my supper that would provide the sustenance for the ascent of the mountain.
It's quite a windy day on Achill today, but I found a wee dell out of the wind. I'm just waiting for the evening to spin on. The sun's on my back. My spine is warm.
So I forgot to buy gas for my stove, but I just punched some holes in my little can of curry stuff and made a little stove out of that instead. It's so quiet. So it's time for the final ascent. Croaghan, Achill Island, to see sunset. I think it's going to be clear. All these clouds are dissipating. It is so beautiful here. And a big massive dinner. I had curry and rice. Classic. You can see the shadow of the mist blowing off the ridge. Well, it's not far to go now. Hopefully I can get some shelter at the top, because it looks like I'm going to have about half an hour to wait, I think, for the sunset. We shall see. So many aircraft pass this way. I remember one day when I was climbing my native County Downs Sleeve Crib, I looked out to the west and saw Contrail, and I looked up one of those plane finder apps to see that it was over Achill Island. Amazing. It was long after sunset in Sleeve Crib, and obviously it was brightly illuminated by the sun. I wonder how much more day length an airplane gets. I'm sure it's quite a lot more. I'll put the answer on the screen. Thanks, Super Rowan. Oh. Okay. I think we're getting there. And we're here. We're here. At the top of the mountain, I could see a sundog to the left of the sun. I also met a friendly chap called Andy, who was also awaiting the sunset. Now, Croaghan is some of the highest sea cliffs in Europe. Watching the clouds course around its base, there's a sense of almost overwhelming natural beauty. The mist rolled in about 100 feet beneath us. Out to sea, that carpet of sea fog looked like the tops of clouds one glimpses when on an aeroplane. I was lost for words. Slowly, ever so slowly, the sun sunk into the northwestern horizon. Shadows elongated over the landscape. It was a much more mellow sight than sunrise, but beautiful. The scale of this landscape is almost impossible to get one's head around. You could probably see for 100 miles in any direction above the fog. Slowly, the orb of the sun began to sink into the horizon. I took a couple of shots with the long lens, highlighting the extreme refraction that warps the shape of the sun's disk. Then, once the sun had fully disappeared, it was time to descend to my stealthy camp and rest for the night, and dream of the beautiful phenomena and sunrise and sunset that are forever coursing over the surface of this earth.
Well, it's 5 o'clock the next morning. Not bad. Well, thanks for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed that. And, yeah. Hope you all stay true and beautiful to what you want to do. I'll see you again.